create community, and bring people from diverse backgrounds together. And today she's going to be talking to us about peace and the power of belonging. So please welcome Dory Stone.
Good morning, everyone. Mother Teresa said, "If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to one another. If we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to one another." It's easy to nod and agree and say, that sounds about right. Mother Teresa said it after all. But what does that statement really mean? What is belonging to one another? What does that actually look like? And is that the reason we don't have peace in the world today? And if so, what can we do about it? Let's explore each of those questions. First of all, what does it mean to belong to one another? When I think about belonging, what comes to mind is the word my. There are some people who I refer to as my friend, my sister, my housemate. I think of those people as being part of the same circle that I'm in. And they're the people who I generally feel some sense of responsibility to, and the people to whom I'm most likely to turn when things get hard. If my sister lost her apartment, or my brother was in jail, or my mom got deported from the country, or a friend was kidnapped by sex traffickers, I would jump into action. I'd do everything that I could to help them. And I've often asked myself, how can I be so complacent when other people are enduring those things right now? People who are probably just as special as the ones who I consider my people. You're probably thinking, well, Dory, maybe because there's a limited amount of time and energy in one human life? And you're right. It would be impossible to broaden our circle of belonging, our circle of active belonging to that extent, to include everyone all the time. We'd all go crazy. But is there something between that extreme and where we stand right now? Is it possible that if we each widened our circle of belonging a little bit, that the cumulative and overlapping effect of all of that could wind up encompassing the whole world? So often we're afraid that we can't do something perfectly or completely, so then we don't try doing it at all, and great opportunities are missed. Let's entertain the idea for a moment then. What would it mean to feel the sense of mutual belonging that you may feel with your siblings or your kids, your friends, or members of your congregation? What would it be like to really feel that way with somebody outside of your ordinary sphere? Say someone who's in prison right now, or an undocumented day laborer who doesn't speak English, or the woman who's sitting on the corner reeking of body odor with her belongings piled all around her. How about someone addicted to heroin, or a teenager who's been expelled from school for delinquent behavior? Imagine if you saw a newspaper headline about that person, and instead of being an anonymous stranger, you thought, oh my gosh, that's my friend so-and-so. Oh, that's my pen pal. That's my lunch buddy. And the key word there is that you're saying my, and that person would be using that word to talk about you too. It's an indication that we belong to one another. That brings us to the second question. Is a lack of such connections the reason that we don't have peace in the world? Is there really a peace-building benefit to including people who are so different from us and who we may see as damaged or difficult in our own circles of acquaintance and belonging? It sounds like that might be a recipe for disaster, not peace. And just as a quick side note, if you're still learning how to set boundaries and take good care of yourself, it can be disastrous. I'm working on that still. But I can also think of a few reasons that Mother Teresa might be right. First of all, in the wake of so many mass shootings in recent history, we're probably all aware that the people who inflict such carnage tend to be people who felt alienated, who lacked a sense of social connection and belonging. And we also know that people are more likely to join gangs or terrorist organizations if they don't have a sense of being valued, a sense of inclusion and security in their lives. There's this great organization called Musicians Without Borders that I had the pleasure to train with last year. And they have found that kids who participate in their music workshops are less likely to bully or even hold prejudices against other kids who are in the workshop, because after they've played music together, they now feel like we're part of the same group. This isn't actually a new discovery. Among the Navajo, or more accurately the Diné people, there's a concept that a criminal is someone who acts as though he has no family. Imagine that. A criminal is someone who acts as though he has no family. So the Diné people recognized that there's certain ways, certain kinds of behavior that we're unlikely to engage in when we're embedded in a familial web of belonging. One of my greatest sources of inspiration right now is Father Greg Boyle, the founder of Homeboy Industries down in LA. It's the largest gang intervention and re-entry program in the world, in which former gang members are working side by side with their past rival gang members, and they're working together in various enterprises like a bakery and a silkscreen business. So at Homeboy Industries, we see this phenomenon happening in reverse. People abandoning lifestyles of violence once they become part of a community that values their membership and sees the good in them. Greg Boyle believes that when people, especially those in power, get to actually see a thriving community like that, a place where the outcast is appreciated and is making a valuable contribution, he believes that only then will our society start to make real changes toward peace and justice. And one final point in favor of Mother Teresa's claim. One could argue that a sense of belonging doesn't only bring about peace because of how it transforms others, the outcast or the potentially violent, but because of how it transforms all of us. Last spring, I had the privilege of working in a garden for a full day with a young man who had recently been released from Slow County Jail, where he was serving time for public drunkenness. This guy was something of a vagabond. He had been hitchhiking and hopping trains all over the country and working various jobs for a while before hitting the road again. And he had a certain toughness to him. He wasn't somebody who I would generally feel a great affinity with. We started off that morning as two awkward strangers. By the time we left in the afternoon, we were giving each other a giant bear hug, and he was telling me it was the best day he had had in a long time. And I sincerely felt that way too. In the course of our conversation while working together, I had come to feel so much awe and appreciation for this person. He had such a sensitive heart and a philosophical mind, and he was so resilient in the face of these immense hardships he'd been dealing with since childhood. I was really moved by his passion for helping other people and his humbleness to admit his own weaknesses and his earnest quest to find a meaningful place for himself in the world. In spite of our drastically different life circumstances, I could now see so much of myself in him, and vice versa. While every encounter with a stranger isn't necessarily as powerful as that one, I have found over and over again that when I actually get to know someone and enter into a relationship with them, I'm so moved by the burdens that they've had to carry that I don't have much room left for judgment about how they've carried them. Greg Boyle maintains that if we stand by the belligerent or the badly behaved, eventually we'll come to see bad behavior for what it really is, the language of the deeply wounded, of those whose burdens are more than they can bear. I believe that that awareness is the ground from which our compassion can grow. I mean, the truth is, we're all carrying our wounds in some way from the violence and the imbalance in this world. We all have some healing to do. And to connect and experience a feeling of friendship with someone who you might previously have been afraid of or felt really alienated from can be extremely healing. Is it possible that when Mother Teresa said, "If we have no peace," perhaps she was also talking about inner peace? Now we've talked about what it could mean to belong to one another and how that could help bring about peace. But how does one actually do it? Can you just walk out the door one morning and say, I'm going to go become good friends now with a complete stranger who I have little in common with and don't know what to say to? I mean, sometimes it just feels like we're from different planets. And when that feeling's mutual, how can you arrive at a sense of closeness or even a basic camaraderie with someone? This is actually an especially challenging question for someone like me who's an introvert and sometimes finds it difficult to make conversation with anybody. So how can we fill Mother Teresa's prescription? How can we overcome what Buddhists call the illusion of separateness when that gulf between us can just feel so wide? A good first step I have found is just to inhabit the same places as other people. Greg Boyle says it's not so much about reaching out to people as whether you can be reached by them. The best example I've personally experienced of this is taking the bus. I don't have a car, and I get around by bicycle and public transit. And riding on the bus has caused me to interact with so many people who I probably wouldn't have otherwise encountered. We're there, sitting next to each other, rolling down the road. And I have made some lasting and unlikely friendships on the bus. I've had really eye-opening conversations and gotten windows into the lives of people who I wouldn't typically know. Another place like that is the laundromat. By doing laundry at the laundromat, instead of having a washing machine at home, I wind up bumping shoulders with the lower income members of my neighborhood, and often with people who don't speak English, or people who have lost their housing and sit in the laundromat in the winter to stay warm. By just inhabiting the same places as other people, even without an effort to forge connections, connection is often born. Of course, another way is by volunteering. You could tutor at-risk teens, serve at a soup kitchen, or answer the phone for a crisis hotline. Greg Boyle, I know I'm quoting him a lot, but he's my great inspiration and teacher at the moment. Greg Boyle says that serving others is a good start, but it's actually just the hallway that leads to the grand ballroom. Because when you're in service, there's this separation between service provider and service recipient. But the grand ballroom, he says, is this place of exquisite mutuality, where we're just two people together, and all the other distinctions and barriers fade into the background. So how does that happen? How can the hallway of service lead to this grand ballroom of exquisite mutuality? In my experience, you can't really make it happen. You can just make space for it to happen, and sometimes it will. Here's a story. Last year, I was going to go serve at a Thanksgiving dinner for the homeless in San Luis. I didn't have my bike that day, so I was walking to the place. Because I'm walking down the sidewalk, I meet this other guy who's walking down the sidewalk. He's limping with an injured leg. We exchange a few words and realize we're both going to the same place. He strikes me as someone who people tend to keep their distance from. He's really disheveled, smelling strongly of body odor and of a putrid, severe skin infection. He's missing a lot of teeth, so when he talks, little flecks of saliva fly in my face. He has a gruff demeanor and just a very unsugar-coated way of speaking. So I'm polite to him, and when we get to the place, we go our separate ways. He goes to the dining area, I go to the serving area. Later that evening, I spot a piano in the corner, and it turns out I've been practicing really hard for an upcoming recital where I'm going to be playing Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. So I take this opportunity to go over and practice the piano. Well, that guy from earlier on the sidewalk limps over, and the whole time I'm playing, he just stands there transfixed with this huge grin on his face. When I finish, he's eager to talk with me, and he tells me why he loved that music so much. It turns out that his mom was a concert pianist, and she used to play Tchaikovsky all the time. So when he hears Tchaikovsky's music, it takes him back to being a little boy and hearing his mom play the piano. He tears up telling me this, and I know what he's talking about, because that is how I feel when I hear Beethoven's Für Elise, because my mom always used to play that when I was little. I tear up too. And then we get into this whole conversation about how much we love classical music and our moms. We're in the grand ballroom. For me, that sense of kinship sometimes arises in moments when laughter overtakes me and another person, particularly over some all too familiar human issue like trying to not pass gas in public. Or if I go through an ordeal with someone, like we're locked in an elevator together or we're trying to catch a dog that's running into the street. Or just when I see someone cry and I recognize their deepest fears and hopes and dreams as the same as mine. I recently helped to do interviews for a documentary film about local people without housing. Instead of asking questions only about homelessness, how do you lose your house? What's the hardest thing about being out here? Do you have a plan to move forward? We also asked questions like, are you a cat person or a dog person? What makes you laugh? Do you have a secret talent or skill? What's the most meaningful thing you've done in your life? We asked people those questions in the hope that they might be doorways to the grand ballroom, and they often were. So say you're feeling inspired right now. You want to go give this a try. The question still remains, how? Where? What can you do today or this week to start building this sense of mutual belonging with members of our community who are often excluded, judged, or alone? One way you could start is by asking yourself, what's a group that you feel some judgment about? Maybe a particular religion or the opposite end of the political spectrum. Maybe people who have vandalized a public building or parents who have had their kids taken away from them. Who do you have some judgment about? And then ask yourself, how much time have you spent with someone from that group? How many conversations have you had? Is there some place or some way that you could give that a try and see what happens? I lead a local organization called Common Ground Worldwide, and one of our main goals is to help facilitate those sorts of connections, to help make it easier for all of us to do this, to create places where it can naturally happen. Common Ground Worldwide also runs the community garden here in Paso up at Centennial Park, which is where that story I told earlier took place. I have personally found that gardening and farming are where I tend to really feel a sense of kinship with people. I've been an intern and a worker on various farms, and the best conversations I've had have been while weeding a row of crops or harvesting tomatoes with someone. Like I told you before, I'm really an introvert. And there's something about working together side by side with the plants and the soil that just makes all that social anxiety evaporate. I just love sharing with people the miracle of seeds germinating. You too? Great, we should garden together. It's beautiful, the colors, the aromas. There's something that can be so unifying about that simple act of growing food and harvesting and eating it together, and also uplifting. So as I said, Common Ground Worldwide runs the educational garden at Centennial Park off of Creston Road, and there are a lot of opportunities there for more people to get involved. But we also have a bigger vision. That vision is to create a therapeutic farm and community center where people from all walks of life can come have experiences like this. A place like Homeboy Industries in LA that provides employment and training, but also more than just employment, belonging. So picture this. We're on a spacious property here in northern SLO County, or possibly just over the Monterey County line. And over there you can see a fruit orchard and all these rows of vegetable crops. And you can see some people over there. They're working together harvesting carrots for the farm stand up there by the road, and also for some orders that we got from local restaurants. And then just up that way at the picnic table, those people sitting over there are making flower arrangements and hand-woven baskets for our gift shop. Up there in the gazebo in the garden, you might see some people sitting in a circle. We won't disturb them right now because they're having a restorative justice circle. One of the main things that we do here is learn and practice new ways of communicating with each other and working through conflict. And today, one of our skilled volunteers is here, and she's helping facilitate restorative circles. If you take this path down this way, you'll come to our community center. That's where we have shared meals and group events. And we're actually having a theater performance there tonight. You're all welcome to come. Uh-oh. I think that's meant for me. I'm almost there. And then if you continue on beyond the community center, there's an area just down that way we call the village. And that's where some of our community members live here on site in these really beautiful little straw bale cottages that we can rent super affordably because they're mostly built from reclaimed materials, and our great volunteer team came together and put up these cottages. So this tour could go on for a while, but that's an introduction. I know that we can do this here in Paso. We can take the ideas about peace building from this conference today and put them into real action here in our community. Let's make this conference bear some fruit. Let's take all the talk and the learning and the inspiration that we walk away with today and do something with it so that we can look back on this first annual peace conference as the beginning of something new that was born in Paso Robles. The day that peace really did start to become a little bit more possible. Would you like to be part of that? All right, if so, I'm glad. If so, get out a paper and a pen right now and write this down. All lowercase, all one word, common ground worldwide at live.com, or maybe it's live.com, I don't know. Common ground worldwide at live.com. That's our email address, and we would love to hear from you. We're looking for more volunteers right now, as well as advisors, donors. Also, we have a couple of spots on our board of directors for additional board members. So there are many ways, large and small, that you could be part of this. I'd also like to invite you to come visit me out in the lobby at lunchtime or after the conference, and I'll be out there with copies of my book, Growing Home, which explores a lot of the themes that I've been talking about today. Those are available by donation, and all donations will go 100% to supporting Common Ground Worldwide. I'll also have pamphlets and flyers and a sign-up sheet for anyone who would like to get involved or stay in touch. So I'd like to end now with one last quote by Greg Boyle that echoes the words of Mother Teresa. No matter how focused we may be on our worthy goals of peace, justice, and equality, they actually can't happen without an undergirding sense that we belong to one another. Seek first the kinship, then see what happens. Seek first the kinship, and then see what happens. Will it lead to greater peace in the world? Or here in our community? I think there's only one way to find out. So at this critical time right now on the earth and in our lives, I invite you to join me and give it a try. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dory. I actually read one of Dory's books, and I must confess to having a tear in the eye a couple of times on that book. It was really nicely done, and we're very appreciative of the work that she's doing, and we actually support that vision that she has. So we have a short video to show you right now, and we'll do that. And now to tell us a bit about what Sunrise Rotary activities are is Lindy Althouse. Very pleased to be able to introduce her to tell you some of the things we're actually doing in the community and the actions that we're taking. Lindy.
I am so happy to have such a diverse group of people attending this conference that represent so many different parts of our communities, plural. And as part of what Rotary International does and the Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise, we work at all scales, from the community, the personal, to the county, intercounty, and international levels. Our Rotary Club of Paso Robles Sunrise has done so many things that when I told Manny how many words I was going to put up on the screen, he groaned. I said, okay, I won't put the words up on the screen. I'm just going to rattle a whole bunch of things off. And I do this in part just to give you a little bit of what a tiny little club with 20-some people can do over the years, one project at a time. We have provided a boat for children to get to a school in a community in South America. We helped to drive a fire truck into Mexico so they would have some fire protection. We set up a bakery and sewing equipment for women in Central America. We did water wells in Africa. We set up a peanut factory in Africa. Why a peanut factory? Peanuts are really good protein, and the people built it themselves. We didn't build it for them. We built a park in Guatemala, thanks to Nancy Fisk, and we didn't do it ourselves. We did it with a number of other people and groups in Guatemala. We've had polio drives. We've sent people to different countries to immunize around the world. Craig Armstrong, one of our Rotarians, the son-in-law of Dick Bloomquist, did a cleft palate clinic on a medical trip with another one of our Rotarians, with another bigger group. Now, Craig is an engineer. But you know, we use our vocational service however we can. And whether we're an engineer and we're helping out to support an activity, or we're the doctors or the nurses themselves, we're there. We've done wheelchair drives. We have for really cool wheelchairs for people who've never been able to get about. We've supplied library books for children in Bali, where another one of our Rotarians moved and said, these kids need library books. We sent housing for people after the Katrina hurricane. We did tree planting right here in California this last year after our devastating fires. We've supported our community foundation. We support our seniors with a barbecue every year. And we have done smoke detectors for seniors in the Quail Run residential development with our fire department. And you know, I got to thinking, there's a lot of things we could do with our police department. Got kind of excited about that today. We've donated money to get the Centennial Pool built so that kids who need to learn to swim, don't you think every kid should learn to swim if they want to? Gets a place to swim. We helped to fix up the downtown play area, and more recently, Maria was telling us about the shade that was needed at the upper end of town, so we helped support that as well. We sent bedding over to women that were re-entering the workforce, and we've sent homeless day packs and personal essentials out into the field, into the Salinas River for those people who are living and working there. We've dug trenches for a water fountain in the Centennial Park in Paso Robles. We helped fix the ball field dugouts. Did you know this little club was so busy? You know, when I was talking on KCBX a couple of weeks ago, Fred Monroe said to me, he said, Lindy, I thought Rotarians were a bunch of stodgy men talking about derivatives and interest rates. I said, oh no, look at me. I'm a Rotarian at work. We've sent a number of kids with scholarships on to school in colleges and for technical programs. We've also worked with our middle school kids on a 4-way essay contest. Rotarians believe that some of the primary elements of your behavior involve, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? We've supported Rotary Youth Leadership Awards for a diverse group of students who go down to Ojai to get training on leadership, kids that are put together just like you and me today. I don't know a lot of you. I love getting to know a lot of you. They don't either. And those kids, like these 5 that are up here, that I'm so proud to have you guys here from Paso Robles High School. they come into this organization and they said, we're invited to this peace conference, but do we really fit in? There's a bunch of people that are a whole lot older than me. And you guys, we are so excited that Paso Robles High School brought you here or allowed you to come here, because we have work to do. And what Common Ground Worldwide is doing here in Paso, we want to work on with our civic leaders. That's our next big project here in Paso Robles, and serving our underserved. And with that, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindy. Yeah, lots going on. Our next speaker is Bianca Neff, who has been active in humanitarian work for over 20 years. She's worked in Latin America, Central Asia, and North Africa, and earned her master's degree as a Rotary Peace Fellow at the University of Bradford, Yorkshire, England. She serves as founding director of Petra Peace Builders, which she'll tell us a bit about today, and has lived in a lot of countries. I think 7 is my count, and currently runs the organization from Malaga, Spain. So we're very pleased that Bianca could make it here today, and please welcome Bianca Neff.
Thank you, Dan, and good to be with everybody this morning. My name is Bianca. How many Rotarians in the room? Okay. And I know that all the Rotarians have heard about the Rotary Peace Fellowship, but maybe the others haven't. I'm not going to go into that today because there's just not enough time and there's too much good stuff that I want to talk about. But I do want to say to the Rotarians in the room, Petra Peace Builders is the fruit of my own experiences in the field, but it would not have happened had it not been for my Rotary Peace Fellowship, because it really catapulted me professionally, and my Rotary Peace Fellowship would not have happened without your generous contributions to the Rotary Foundation, out of which foundation this Rotary Peace Fellowship is a major initiative. So thank you to the Rotarians in the room, and for all of the rest of you that are not Rotarians, please know that your local Rotary clubs are part of a worldwide movement that puts serious professionals in serious places to do really interesting work around the world. I'm really glad to see the high school students here today, because I don't know what you've heard about Rotary before, but Rotary's got it going on. So find the right people to connect with. They will open doors for you. They will help you take the steps that you want to take in your career, college, education, career, further on. Mentors right on your doorstep. Take advantage of them. It's a good community to be a part of. So my name is Bianca. I'm half American. I'm half Spanish from the Basque region in northern Spain. That whole history of conflict is a big part of my own family and how I grew up. So I have wrestled with identity issues, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. First thing that we're going to do is just run a quick 3-minute video to give you a picture of the work that we do. I'm actually not going to talk too much about the work we do, but I am going to tie it into how hopefully it affects you guys here, right here in Paso Robles. The heart of peace building is all the same, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's see the video.
There was in a specific moment I really remember that they told us that there was like 700 paramilitary people coming towards the peace community we were accompanying, and I was really scared, like really scared. Then I guess I asked myself, it's like, am I ready to die?
We had received word the night before that several families had been killed, likely. So we had to go assess the situation. And when we arrived, we met with a very, very grisly scene. I had 4 colleagues who, upon return to their home countries, ended up serving a minimum of 6 months, up to 2 years in mental institutions from the trauma that experience caused, and trying to negotiate that experience back into their daily lives.
The same attributes that make them so effective in their work, attributes like empathy, compassion, sensitivity, willingness to risk one's own well-being. These are actually the same attributes that make people most susceptible to the occupational illnesses that we see in this field. How can we foster forgiveness, love, compassion, so that the people doing peace-building work are giving the very best of themselves? And it's important because people are watching. People in society are watching to see whether peace is something that they can believe in. And that's the difference that peace builders make. And that's why resilience for them in particular is so very important.
I've been usually working with activists, local activists. And they all suffer from the same, which is burnout, which is depression, which is that pressure. And they always talk about how useful it would be to have all those tools, that no one has taught them,
Think about when a bone in the body is broken. Doctors say that the place where the bone is broken actually heals back and it becomes stronger than before. And that's really important to understand when we're looking at a broken peace builder or somebody who's going through a really hard time. If those people can get the care that they need, if we can mend that bone in the right way, in the right place at the right time, then there's no reason why that bone can't grow stronger than ever before. The problem is, again, when you don't get the care that you need. But if you do, it's actually a really great opportunity.
And that's why I like the Petra's mission, It's something that is needed, and it's a real need. It's nothing that has been made up or created, something that the world somehow is waiting for.
So that's a little picture of my world and the kind of people that I help. I've got a program that I present, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to talk from the heart a little bit, share a few stories, and I hope that it connects with each of you on some level. So I'm going to go a little bit more into the story of the guy, Oscar, who was sharing that story. He's a friend of mine. He's a Spaniard. He and his wife, who's actually Erica in the video, they were working together as a husband and wife team in Colombia, in the FARC-controlled rebel territories, as accompanists to nonviolent communities of peace, and just some of the most amazing work that you can do. Unfortunately, the fact is that when there's no international presence, the risk of violence goes up. But if international folks come in and serve as accompanists and as a presence, the likelihood of violence goes down. Not all the time, and so these folks and the communities that they work in obviously are susceptible to a lot of trauma, even secondary trauma. So I want to tell you a little bit more about the story behind Oscar that we didn't have time to fit in the video. But he talks about being there in a place in the jungle, talking about he got word that 700 paramilitaries were coming and he didn't know what was next. And so I want to sit with that a little bit, just for a few minutes, and get into the heart and the mind of this guy who finds himself in Colombia. And what was not said in the video is what I know, the rest of the story is his friend, is that when he asked himself the question, am I ready to die? The answer to that question was yes. So this was over a period of a weekend. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, these guys are going to be here in an hour, what do we do? No, it was they're 3 days away. Okay, now they're 2 days away. Now they're 1 day away. Now they're 12 hours away. So it's this progression of danger coming to you, and you're making very conscious choices about what you do, right? And so that's the process that I want to talk about today. Is when for Oscar to be able to come to a place where he says, yes, I'm okay with dying. The rest of the story is, am I ready to die? Yes, I am. And in his words, he says, okay, if I die serving these people, this is a life well lived. This is what I'm here to do, and I will have no regrets if my life is over as a result of what my worst fears are. As you know, apparently that did not happen. He got out safely, but he had to face death in the face, right? So as we think about Oscar and his process, I mean, what does it take for a person to get to that point to say, yes, this is the life that I want to live. This is the risk that I'm willing to take. And that's where resilience, I mean, the title of my little talk today is the role of resilience in peace building. Oscar's an incredibly resilient person. For him to have faced everything that he's faced and to not come home and just fall apart, but even if he had fallen apart, I know that he would have taken the time that he needed to heal and go back. So this is not to say that resilience means you never get broken or that you never suffer. No, the suffering is part of peace building. Whether it's here, maybe not violent physical suffering, but there's mental suffering in our work. There's emotional suffering in our work. There's social suffering in our work, you know? So the role of resilience, it's really interesting. I want to share another story about a guy in Afghanistan who I'm coaching right now. So I just wanted to say the other part about Oscar to just have us think, okay, we hear these little sound bites on the video, but what's the deeper part of that story? And who is this person that can face these things? There was a progress of months and years prior to that moment that he was able to make the decision that he did that we would call it a courageous one or a heroic one. But there's all this build-up to that time. So what are we doing in the build-up to our big moment, right? And that's like where I think this message applies to us today. What are we doing with our time? How are we being good stewards of our resources, of our time, of our relationships, of our free time, of our money? Man, it's not like there's any lack of good things in this community happening that you can put your money to. There's no lack of good things that you can spend your time doing. Turn Netflix off, man. Turn it off. Not all of it, but turn 20% of your TV off and go spend some time doing something. Anyway, I'm getting off track. I want to talk about my friend in Kabul. So I'm coaching this guy. He's running a peace building program. He's 28 years old. He's Afghan. And I find it fascinating because I'm a humanitarian coach. And in my career path, I was doing anthropology and then got into conflict resolution, ethnic conflict resolution. And then at the end of my Rotary Peace Fellowship, I kind of got to a crossroads where I realized, wow, there's so many needs in our field. I can either continue going down the road that I wanted, which is to do high-level mediations and for, big-level conflicts. But I don't hear anybody talking about resilience. I don't hear people talking about mental health. I don't hear people talking about trauma. And I have colleagues who are suffering. So the short version is that I felt that my personal best contribution was to find a way to support grassroots efforts. I felt it was better for me to come underneath and support that than to join it just outright. So that's when I got into coaching. Which are the coaching that we do accompanies a lot of the trauma therapy that happens. So what happens when your insurance runs out and the 3 months of therapy that you got is not enough? That's where our coaching comes into play. Who's accompanying you in the long term to meet your personal goals, to meet your professional goals? And it's all about your resilience and what you're doing as a peace builder. So it's taking some of the best things in coaching from the business world, bringing that into peace building, taking some of the best things from the world of first responders and the medical community with debriefing, bringing that into peace building. So that's the kind of work that we do to give you a picture. So when I talk about the coaching this guy in Kabul, which we do over Skype, I sit at my desk in Spain and here's this, young guy and we have our interactions. But what I want to share with you about Tamim in Kabul is that I'm fascinated by the fact that he bears a lot of weight in this peace-building program in Kabul. This is a war-torn country, and if anybody has weight on his shoulders to lift up his community, it's this guy. He's got a young family. He's got 2 little kids at home. I don't know how much his family really is behind him and supporting him, even in his work, so he's suffering alienation there. But I think it's so interesting that of all the issues that he could bring to the table in a coaching conversation, we could do, executive coaching around the organizational goals and aims. We could talk about any number of things, but what he's most concerned about is his own personal integrity and growth. And that's what we're talking about in our coaching sessions. So we just finished our 4th session. At the end of the 4th session, we're talking about the progress made in the series goals that we set from the beginning. And he's telling me that his wife is noticing certain changes in him, and she's asking, like, what's happened to you? What's different? And so in 4 short sessions, he is seeing noticeable difference in his reactions to things, his emotional responses. And I'm like, man, this is the sweet spot of what I love doing in my work. Getting to the heart of what a guy in Kabul, like, I've had this thing for Afghanistan for decades. I've never gone there. I've always wanted to. The door's always closed. As soon as I was getting ready to buy the ticket, whatever, time after time after time, opportunities closed. But this is my contribution to serving peace-building efforts there. And I'm just fascinated that after 4 sessions, this guy feels like Petra is making a difference in his life. And he looks up to me as an older sister. And in Afghanistan, there's a term on the end of a name. It's kind of like I don't know, maybe I'm butchering this, Wade, but in Japanese, like san, like Wade-san. In the Dari language, which is what they speak in Afghanistan, it's John. So he calls me Bianca John, which is a term of endearment and somewhat respect. And it's just really interesting how the people that I work with and that I see are crying out for people to walk alongside them and to have a safe space to share their deepest struggles. You know, and within the first 20 minutes of our first session, I felt like he was my brother. And who was it that was talking about just reaching out and connection and like, just reach out and see what happens? Like, that's what I do all the time with the people that we work with. And I'm always amazed that these other people trust me to come into their lives. They don't know me. I've got all these stereotypes against me as an American and this and that. They trust me. They think that I have something to offer, and hopefully they sense a spirit of humility that is there to serve. And through that, it's these amazing collaborations and partnerships. But coming back to the issue of integrity and personal growth, like, this is a peace builder that is serious about who he's becoming, not just about what he's doing, right? And how often in our lives, in our work, in our community service, do we think about the concept or the idea that what we do is important, but not as important as who we are while we're doing it? I personally don't hear enough of that kind of talk in the podiums that I hear people speak from. And so I'm just throwing it out there today. You know, Gandhi famously said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." How well are we doing that? When you go home today, like, do you think about that? Or you just think about the next project? Or how much do we think about mending the relationships even within our own Rotary clubs or within our schools or within our families? Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on ourselves, I think. And trust me when I say that I am speaking to myself first. I really am. But I can say with confidence that I trust myself enough to know, and I give myself enough grace and patience in the process. I know what I'm becoming to do. If I can't do it today, how can I take that one step further? Just one step. So I guess the message that I just want to leave with all of us today is that all these things, there's so many things that are required for peace building. I mean, you need technical expertise, you need resources, you need to get fundraisers out there, and those are all important. But without the integrity, I mean, integrity is that, yeah, it's that well, it's that source that's going to boost your resilience in all this, that when you hit lows, you're going to be able to come back up. Even when you're disappointed with yourself, that's okay. You're going to come back up because you've done that work. So all those other things are important. But to me, that resilience rooted in who you are as a person and becoming your best self, that's everything. That's all I've got, Mr. Dan.
Thank you very much, Bianca. Our next speaker is Commander Paul Euler. And Paul is a Navy reservist. He's currently serving with Strike Fighter Squadron 122 at Naval Air Station Lemoore, where he's an instructor pilot. And Paul also works for the Department of Defense. He was born right here in Paso, well, not right here in Paso Robles, but in the Central Coast, and was raised here and is a graduate of Paso Robles High School. He attended the United States Naval Academy and graduated from that institution in 2002. And he began his career as a pilot at that time. And Paul is here today to share some of his experiences and about achieving and how achieving peace is personal. Paul, welcome.
On December 8th, 2007, a pair of the U.S. Navy's newest strike fighter aircraft operating over the Arabian Sea were redirected from a training mission to intercept and identify an unknown aircraft that appeared intent on overflying coalition warships in international waters. As the two Navy jets accelerated towards the interloper, tensions were high. Good morning, my name is Paul Euler. I'm a veteran and a Navy reservist. I served for 11 years on active duty, completing 3 combat deployments in support of operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Those tours took me to the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and to many ports of call across the world. Through my travels and many interactions with people from various backgrounds, I have come to the conclusion that peace is personal. Further, I believe that lasting, widespread peace is only to be achieved to the extent that we approach and receive others with respect, we communicate openly, and we listen closely in order to gain a deep understanding of the experiences and ethos that shape our lives. At a small fabric shop in Dubai, the shopkeeper was relentless. He pressed my friends and I, who were enjoying a welcome respite from the pace of life aboard an aircraft carrier, about our nationalities, demanding to know whether or not we were Americans. We replied in vague platitudes. The Navy's standing policy held it was best not to divulge our identities or professions while interacting with locals in Middle Eastern countries. On this particular day, however, in this particular fabric shop, I made a conscious decision to deviate from that guidance. It was broad daylight. The twisting corridors of the souk outside were thronging with people, many of them Westerners. I was accompanied by 4 friends. I felt safe enough to risk what might follow. I took a breath and told the shopkeeper I was an American. "Are you in the Army?" he demanded. I said, "No, I'm in the Navy." "Have you ever been to Afghanistan?" he continued. I took a deep breath. I told him I had. "Well, I am from Afghanistan," he said. I took a deep breath as he paused. That was our cue. My friends and I started moving toward the door. "And I would like to thank you and your friends for the work you are doing to protect my country," he said. I was stunned. In the minutes that followed, the shopkeeper shared deeply personal stories relating his experience and the experiences of his family members and his friends, some of whom had escaped and some of whom still remained. My friends and I listened enthralled as a man we thought would surely hate us laid bare the agony of fear, separation, and devastation that decades of unchecked oppression had wrought in the country he called home. When it was time for us to leave, He embraced us. That interaction solidified in my mind a belief that first took root in me 5 years earlier on a training flight over the Arabian Sea. I was exhilarated as I banked my FA-18 Super Hornet away from the HMS Manchester, a British warship operating as part of our carrier strike group, and accelerated toward the unknown aircraft some 20 miles away. I radioed my wingman to assume a covering position and peered through the thick haze. I didn't know what to expect. I knew I was responsible for escorting the aircraft in close formation as long as it remained in proximity to coalition or US warships. I also needed to bring back pictures for intelligence to analyze. They would want proof of the interaction and the nationality of the aircraft. So I pulled out my camera. We closed the distance quickly, unable to visually acquire our objective. We were less than 2 miles away when a vague white shape began to materialize in the brown, soupy sky. It was a maritime patrol aircraft, a large, lumbering, 4-engine airplane whose mission was to scour the sea for ships and submarines. The red, white, and green markings of the Iranian Air Force became clearly visible. The simmering animosity between the US and Iran was nothing new. What was new was the presence of our carrier strike group. We had only just sailed into the northern Arabian Sea a few hours prior to my training mission. In the absence of open hostilities, any untoward action could be misconstrued. I needed to execute my intercept exactly in accordance with the procedures I had been taught, or I risked unintentionally escalating the conflict. I slowed to match the speed of the much larger aircraft, sliding slowly along its left side from the tail to the nose. Now I was close enough to clearly make out the face of the pilot in the left seat through the cockpit window. I raised my camera and snapped a few pictures. When I dropped the camera, I realized the Iranian pilot had a camera too. He was taking pictures of me. I guess his higher-ups have similar expectations to mine, I thought. He waved. Was it a wave? Or was he signaling me to get away from his airplane? He waved again. And this time he was smiling. Okay, that's unmistakable. He's smiling. I waved back. Behind my oxygen mask, a smile was beginning to form on my face too, though he couldn't see it. I realized I hadn't taken any photos from this exact vantage point. Maybe I'd get a photo of him waving. I raised the camera and snapped a couple more photos. Suddenly, a second shape appeared in the left window behind the Iranian pilot's seat. It was a head. Only this head was much, much smaller than the pilot's. I drifted a bit further from his plane while taking pictures, so I slid my aircraft closer. From behind the pilot's seat peered the face of a boy, no more than 12 years old. He was smiling broadly. He thrust his small hand into the window and waved, then gestured with his fingers in a V like a peace sign. I waved back and then showed my own V peace sign in response. The boy's face turned to face the pilot. The pilot in the front seat nodded and seemed to be laughing. It was clear that they were sharing an animated conversation, though I had no idea what they said. Watching them talk, it hit me. Today is Saturday. That could be the pilot's son. Were they out for a weekend joyride and just happened upon our strike group? Surely they weren't executing directed surveillance operations over our warships with a child aboard. I didn't have children yet, but I knew that if I did, I would want to take them flying with me. So the idea of flying with my child was a totally relatable thing. The pilot and the boy continued to wave, smile, and talk as they slowly trundled through the airspace our strike group had so carefully prescribed for coalition training operations. As I escorted them, the pilot banked his big plane to the north, and when they neared Iranian national waters, I turned south, collected my wingman, and returned to the ship. That night, I recounted the details of my eventful flight in a journal. My journal entry ended with the words, "I hope we don't go to war with Iran. If we do, I will do what I must, but it will make me very sad." How was it that my interaction with this man and this boy from another country had so changed my perception of a place that I had never seen? The explanation struck me. Peace is personal. It is only human to fear the unknown. It is only human to resent and distrust those whom we misunderstand. It is my firm belief that effective diplomacy and maintenance of lasting peace hinge upon fundamental interpersonal tenets: respect, communication, and understanding. If you disagree with me or find my assertion naive, please consider this. The United States and Russia are two countries at odds with each other. We levy sanctions against Russian leaders, oppose their global influence, and decry their disregard for the values and rights we hold dear. And yet, even as this conflict perpetuates on terra firma, right this moment, our astronauts and their cosmonauts rely on each other for their very survival aboard the International Space Station. We trust their engineers, scientists, and technicians to design and build rockets to transport our citizens to and from space. How is this possible? It is possible because we are not individually bound by the policies or posturing of nations. When we free ourselves to respect, communicate, and understand, we prove that peace is personal. I encourage each of you to put the idea that peace is personal into practice by approaching and receiving others respectfully, communicating openly, and listening closely so that you are able to understand the experiences and ethos that shape each other's lives. Thank you for your attention. Wherever you go, may you bring peace.
Thank you very much, Paul. We have another Navy veteran here with us today, and that is Leon Tackett. Leon is originally from Paso, Robles, although he left our town to go to high school in Seattle and graduate from there, and went right into the Navy after that time, served 27 years, most of it in the explosive ordnance disposal end of that. And he retired from the Navy, came back here, and now he and his wife Cindy are up at Tackett Family Vineyards, where he makes exceptionally good wine. And you should all go up there sometime and check it out because it's fantastic up on Von Dolan Road. He's done an amazing job raising funds for the EOD Warrior Foundation, and really just a remarkable amount of money that Leon has raised for that organization to help folks heal, those folks who've served their country to heal. And Leon has also been named an ambassador to California by the EOD Warrior Foundation. We're very happy that he could make it today and talk to us about how that organization is helping heal those who serve their country. So please welcome Leon Tackett.
Around, read them up a little bit and stuff. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate the time. I have a lot more slides in the 10 minutes, but I'll fire through these pretty fast for you. Just kind of explain a little bit about who we are, what the EOD Warrior Foundation is. So Dan did mention that EOD is explosive ordnance disposal, but in a nutshell, what that is your military's bomb squad. You can just start firing. I don't know who's running the slides. Is it me? Do I push them? Oh, all right. Right? Just the arrow. There it is. Okay. There it is. Explosive ordnance disposal. So your military's bomb squad. I guess I need to sit in front of this. Hope you can hear me. You know, a lot of us say it's the most dangerous job in the military, and I think a lot of us will agree. You got this kid that's going to run down range to a device that's put there to maim or kill somebody, and their job is to go in there and take care of it. It's all four services. It's the only true joint program that we have in the military. All four services go to the exact same school down at Eglin Air Force Base, and they all train together and do the same things, except for us Navy guys. We have to be special. We get to go through dive school because we take care of the underwater ordnance as well, your sea mines and your torpedoes and such. First in, last out. So, you know, 2003, Qasar, it wasn't SEAL team, it was EOD that was there first. We go in and we clear all the ports and make sure that they're clear for our troops to get there and do their job. They're the ones that go into the houses first. They're the ones that go everywhere, buildings, it doesn't matter. EOD goes in first and they're the last to leave to make sure everything is clear and ready for everybody else to do their job. Enabling access is the key term, and EOD up is the cry, because they're usually in the back of the team, and they'll be coming up if somebody sees something bad, EOD up, and then they go in and they take care of the problem. So now the sad part of it, 133 killed since 9/11. It's been a pretty rough 17 years since that happened, a lot. But a lot of it too, the reason I'm here and doing what I do is the ones that are left over, the ones that were wounded, whether it's physical or whether they're hidden injuries, PTSD, TBI, you know, post-traumatic stress, and traumatic brain injury. Very bad. We just lost a Navy kid last week. Took his life. So we're trying to fix it. So let's talk a little bit about all our veterans real quick. So there's a number a lot of people see. You hear about in the news too often, 22. It's 22 veterans a day taking their lives. It's basically about one every hour. And there you go. I mean, this kid last week, 25 years, he was in the military, got out, and just the demons were just too much. He had multiple combat tours, and it was just too much. And he said it was time to go. So we got to knock it off. It's a number bigger than zero. We need to get that number down to zero. There's a lot of organizations out there working on it, trying. Right here in San Miguel, we have the Mighty Oaks. It's a great organization that's taken care of. They bring a lot of kids in, and they're doing great success. Boulder Crest Retreats, another one. They've got a couple of those around. We're trying to get these guys going, but it takes money, and we're trying to figure that out. But the big thing with that number is, you know, only 21 states report their numbers. So we don't even know if that 22 is accurate. So we're trying to get our hands around that. It's just a guess. But number crunchers go in there and they tell us that's what it is, but nobody really knows. So it's community support and what we can do. You know, Dan mentioned that we're doing a lot of fundraising at TACIT. I handed out a flyer. Right now we're on a $500,000 fundraising campaign that we're working on here, and it's locally. It's based out of Templeton. There's a little green flyer going around. We're doing a raffle for a vehicle. And it's for two different foundations, actually. We teamed up with another local foundation called Quality of Life Plus. It's actually based out of Cal Poly, where they challenge engineering students to help veterans with challenges that they have. Maybe there's somebody that can't get their legs on right, or their wounds are so severe they can't wear a proper prosthetic, so they design different prosthetics for them. It's a great foundation. They're doing a lot of good work. That's why we're working with them. And it's down there on the bottom. But it takes a lot of communities coming together and people helping and just realizing that this is an issue. You know, 27 years that I was in, I personally never met anybody that was pro-war. Nobody is that I personally know. But there's a job to do. It's protecting our country. These kids did it. They stood up. And some of them paid a dear price. And it's my passion to take care of them and make sure that we're taking care of them into the future. EOD Warrior Foundation, our big thing is emergency financial relief, is one of the top key points that we do. You know, when somebody gets wounded, their family's completely disrupted, as you can imagine. So there's a lot of steps in that process. Well, in that process, maybe there's a spouse member that needs to be with them. Well, maybe that spouse member has a job. You know, she or he has to pay the bills. But we'll still get them to where they need to be for free. We'll pay their way, and we'll also cover their bills while they're trying to take care of their spouse. So there's that. Right off the bat, they get like $4,000, I think, and then there's more grants that they can get down the road. Education is one of the keys that I like. We do have a wall, unfortunately, for our the 133 members that you saw before. So those children of those family and the spouses automatically get scholarships, 4-year scholarships to college. So it's a great piece of that, what we do, that I personally think is one of the best. Hope and Wellness, we do a lot of retreats. We just did one in Colorado. Families went to Colorado, kayaked down the Colorado River. And it was just bringing all these families together that had been through conflict, had been through, trying to figure out where their place and purpose is in life anymore after the military. And all these families come together and they connect. And it's a great piece. And then we have the memorial care that we have to take care of down in Florida. A couple numbers, I won't go through each of those, with you, but like I said, the biggest one that I like to key on is scholarship program. We're really getting up and above on this thing. I'd like to see it more and more everything, but it's $5,000 a year for 4 years for their scholarship, and we're going to keep increasing that number to where we're basically just paying for these kids to go to school, and that's where we need to be.
Let me switch out your mic.
Oh.
No problem.
Hear my voice anyway. Okay.
Great voice.
How's that?
You're doing great.
Better?
It's
Awesome.
just the frequency.
Okay. I'll try to talk more direct into it. Hopefully everybody's been able to hear some of it. So questions, brainstormings, what we can do together. I'm happy to discuss anything with anybody at any time. Well, I could hear that. That went up. What can we do together? How do we make this better for our veterans? Like I said, the veterans and what's going on out there, it's my passion. It's what I do. I mean, it's what we do for Tack and Family Vineyards, our winery that Dan mentioned. I mean, that's our front runner. We just did another fundraiser for a service dog. We did a whole series of wines specifically to raise money for a service dog, for a service animal, for one of our service members. So we're hoping that has a big impact on somebody's life. We'll see how it plays out, but we're getting there. And I'd like to thank you very much. Short and sweet.
Thank you, Leon. And these talks, both by Paul and Leon, just go to the peril and the price of these conflicts. And it's something that we need to eliminate from our world. And that's understanding what folks go through in these things is a big part of that. And speaking of that, our next group is the Alternative to Violence Project. We're very happy to have you here today. This has been an all-volunteer conflict transformation program. AVP groups and facilitators are active in communities, schools, and prisons across the United States and many other countries. And here to tell us about it today and actually do a little bit of a demonstration, we hope, is Roger Brown, Nancy Vimla, and Gracie Wagner. Thank you very much for being here. You can pull that out too.
Okay. Hi, my name is Roger Brown, and I'm really feel grateful for the opportunity to come here and share with you what AVP is all about. And we have just but a few of our group of facilitators to come and share and try to help you experience an example of what Alternatives to Violence is all about. And without spending too much time, because time is always of the essence in AVP. We always run short of time. I'm just going to move right into somewhat of an introduction, and then we have a small agenda that we try to follow, and we'll see what happens, and you'll learn more about who we are as individuals a little later on. And there is no leaders, there is no instructors. We are all facilitators, and we're all on equal ground here. So I'm a little taken aback by having to stand up at a podium and tell you things. Okay, and we always do things together. So, is there anything my facilitators need to add to that I've said so far? Okay. So again, my name is Roger Brown. I did my first AVP workshop, seems like decades ago, but it was in 2002, and it was life-changing for me. And that's why I stand before you today. You'll hear more about me later.
Yeah, and my name is Grayson, and one thing about AVP is, like Roger said, we're all equals, and AVP seeks to create a connection, and one way that the Alternative to Violence Project seeks that connection is through seeing the best in ourselves. And so what I'm going to do is just ask each one of us to identify an adjective, a positive adjective, and attach that adjective to your name. I tend to be a little bit serious, so I identified Goofy. My name's Grayson, so Goofy Grayson. And
Nancy. For many years, I was nifty Nancy. And then I felt like, hey, I feel pretty nifty. I'm going to go forward. And now I'm numinous Nancy.
And the name I picked for myself years ago, because I didn't feel so much so, is Reliable, Roger. And that helped me develop into the person that stands before you today, because today you can rely on.
And then throughout the course of the workshop, which usually takes place over 2, maybe 3 days, when we identify ourselves or when we identify the other person, we will we'll use that adjective. So I'll raise my hand, I'll say Goofy Grayson, or I'm numinous Nancy, or Reliable Roger. And what we found is that oftentimes, throughout the course of our lives, we can be hard on ourselves, and we see others and we see the world the way we see ourselves. And so when we can see the best in ourselves, we can see the best in others. And so it's just kind of a practice that throughout the course of the workshop, just kind of, I don't know, just, yeah, it's affirming. So has anybody found a positive adjective that they've attached to their name that they'd like to share? Volunteer?
Follow through.
Follow through?
Phyllis, follow through.
Phyllis, oh, beautiful. Very nice, very nice. Anybody else? Is there anybody that's been through the workshop that has a positive adjective that they've attached to their name that they'd like to share? Anybody? No?
Lucky Lindy.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Lucky Lindy. All right.
Quiet and peaceful heart.
Beautiful. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Then we'll go ahead and I'm going to pass the mic to.
Maybe I really don't need a microphone. I don't think I got a pretty projecting voice, but I'll stand here. I just like to add to what Grayson has said, that the reason we choose these adjective names is to help encourage connection with each other, and possibly some attributes that we might want to help ourselves along with as far as feeling better about ourselves. And that's why we try to encourage that. Although I've been in some workshops where people would sit there, nope, I'm a Fred and that's it. And that's okay. That's okay. They seem to loosen up after that two-day thing.
We're going to now do concentric circles.
Nancy, please use the mic because we're recording this.
Oh. Well, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Nancy Vimla, and I took my first basic workshop. We do have, our workshops are usually 20 hours. And when I took that basic workshop, it was in the community, and it was a diverse workshop. We always go for as diverse as we can get, and there's usually 20 or less people. We always work in teams, AVP teams. That's really important. And So when I took my first workshop, I said, "Oh my God, I love this so much," and you'll never believe the reason. It's because I was able to be silly, and we were all silly together, and it was just made me say, "I'm going to do this for the rest of my life," and it's so wonderful to see people laughing and just being silly together, and then also seeing people learning new things, like never realizing something before. And it's all from being in this circle and doing exercises together and Light and Livelies, we'll tell you about that, together and for this 20 hours. And everyone just has a great time and just loves each other. And it's just a wonderful thing. I've been doing it every month at least for the last almost 10 years. And so I'm going to pass it to Roger, who's going to facilitate an exercise called concentric circles.
Concentric circles is one of the exercises that is very near and dear to my heart. I love this thing. I've seen it. It is so connecting. I think I failed to mention that AVP is experiential. What you are willing to bring to this workshop is what you're going to get out of it. I'm not going to tell you what you should do, or what you have to do, or what you're supposed to do. But what we do is we bring everybody into a circle where we sit equally. And with concentric circles, we generally would have the group split into twos. There would be a circle facing outward and then a circle facing inward. But this room is not quite positioned for something like that. So to introduce yourselves to each other, say, because sometimes in the workshops I've been, we don't know each other. You probably know the person that's next to you. And all I'm going to ask you to do, this is a speaking exercise and also a listening exercise. So actually, all I'm going to ask you to do is to turn to your partner. One of you pick the letter A, and the other one will be B. So I'm going to say that A speaks first, and the B's, and I'll tell you what the B's are going to do. They're just going to listen intently. Since there is an essence of time, all I'm going to do is give you the first question, and that is, I would like you to finish the sentence. My favorite role model in life is, and why? Who's first? A. A goes first. Thank you. My favorite role model in life is, and why? Okay, that's time. Time. I forgot to mention that there is a timekeeper on this, and I forgot to tell you that because of time with this presentation, you only had 7 seconds to answer that question. But I appreciate the volunteering of activity with connecting. And so now I would like to switch roles and have the A's just listen intently while the B's explain and finish the sentence. My favorite role model in life is, and why? Go ahead, 7 seconds. Time, time. See how easy I am? I gave you guys 15 seconds. Okay, now for the second question, because what this exercise is connecting. It's connecting on somewhat uplifting and shallow levels, but then we also like to go deep. And and we usually don't run this exercise until probably into the 15th hour of a 20-hour workshop. Okay, so but the second question, because you guys are so eager and connecting already, I'm preaching to the choir in here today, that the second question is, a time in my life I experienced violence was, and how I reacted to that. And the A's will go first, and I'm going to give you 15. A time I experienced violence in my life and how I reacted to that. Go ahead. Time? 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 Oh, that's better. I'm a bit of a control freak. That's why I like this exercise. So now I'd like to switch roles, have the A's listen intently while the B's finish the sentence. A time I experienced violence in my life was and how I reacted. Go ahead. Okay, that's time. Time. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Time. Usually I got a real big timer with an alarm on it, you know. I like that. Because I have one of these things that I refer to as a Star Trek device. Does amazing things. Just getting used to it. So let me just ask after let's say a 20 or 30 minute concentric circle exercise, I would gather everyone back into the circle, and then I would ask for volunteers like possibly Dory to explain to me how that was for her. Dory? Yes, I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah.
Because it felt like we just barely started to express something and then time was up. So it was like a really good first sentence to a book that makes you want to read more. But then it's like someone closed the book.
Anybody else like to share their experience, if it was hard or just a simple answer?
Just remembering it brought back the emotions of when it happened, even though I was this big.
Mm-hmm. I'll take one more. I heard somebody in the back.
I said it was painful.
Painful. Painful. You know, you heard Nancy say, I just want to speak to that. You heard Nancy say how fun AVP is. What made AVP fun for me is when I was able to open myself and experience the pain. Concentric circles is one of the most viable exercises that I think that I helped open me up when I took my workshop. back in 2002. And that is the dynamics of what we do. We connect on that painful level in all AVP workshops, or we try to facilitate that trusting atmosphere to do that in. And that's where the magic happens, because we all come from different walks of life, but the one thing we share is the same pain. When I hurt and I feel my pain and you share your pain with me, it's the same pain. It took me 38 years of my life to learn that. And I'm still learning because it's hard. With that, I think we want to move back up into that light stuff, and we're going to turn it back over to Nancy for what we like is live and lively. Because after we go down deep, we need to come back up and experience a little fun.
Okay. So, Numinous Nancy, we always say our name when we start talking, so I'm going to say that. And so when I picked this light and lively, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a big group, and we're not going to be in a circle. And what is a good light and lively for that? Because usually they're kind of active, or you're standing up, or you need connection. So I was looking through, we just recently, AVP USA recently came out with a book like this thick of light and livelies, and I was looking through it, and this one came up, and it's called the Chortle Chorus. And so what it is that it's not, I mean, when I read this, I thought, oh my God, can I do this? Because it's, we are going to get to be silly during this. And so we're going to take a little time to just practice a little before we do it, because what basically it is it's a laughing. We're going to be laughing, and once we're going to practice a little laughing, and then I'm going to hand this over, this microphone over to Roger, and I'm going to be thank you. When I keep my hands like this, we're just going to laugh lightly. And then as I go out like this, we'll laugh louder and louder and louder. And then I'm going to just play with it for a while, okay? So let's just have a little, thank you. Let's just practice a little before we start, okay? Don't put it too close. So, let's just kind of go, just kind of wiggle around a little. Okay, you guys are good. Okay. Okay, so let's start. So don't forget, when it's like this, we're just lightly laughing, okay? Okay. Thank you so much. You were fantastic, and I loved it. That was fun. That was really fun. And now we're going to, I just want to see what we're going to do. Is it history. We just wanted to give you a little history of AVP. In 1973, I believe it was around there, that there was the Attica riots, a prison in New York. And a prison nearby, Green Haven, New York, prison, there was a think tank there of older prisoners. And they said, we want a program that can help us and the young prisoners coming in so that they can learn how to change their life so that they don't come back once they leave. And, this is a long story short, but they asked the Quakers, who are known for their peace building and their peace work, they asked them to come and join with them to put this program together. And so in 1975 was the very first AVP workshop in Greenhaven, New York. And since then, we are now in 34 states and 54 countries. And the way most of the countries joined is the Quaker Friends Peace Team would go into these countries after, these terrible conflicting wars. And, where villagers who used to live, in peace together were like totally apart and, just hurting. And, because neighbors had killed their sons and just horrible, horrible things. And so when AVP the Friends Peace Team went in, they brought AVP with them. And they trained people so that they could keep doing these workshops in all these different countries. And that's what we do here too. So anyway, that's a little bit of the history. Thank you. And then, so now we just, I feel like I've kind of given you an idea why I'm here. So I'd like to hand it over to Grace to let her know, so she can let you know why she is here for.
Okay, so Goofy Grayson. And I've been doing AVP for about almost 4 years now, facilitating. And I joined AVP out of, I guess, a desire to get more connected with my heart and my feelings. And what I found through AVP is that certainly we're all connected. And the more I hear other people's experience and experience their feelings, the more I am able to experience mine and take responsibility for my feelings and not blame others. And I guess that really is it at the heart of it. I mean, I could go on, but it's a beautiful thing when I can have the courage and trust myself enough to, in my relationships, just sit with my feelings and trust that the other person won't abandon me if I tell them that I'm angry at them or I'm hurt. And know that it's okay to be angry at somebody and not blame them, but just to own it. I guess, I don't know if that's even okay to say, but that really is it. I have a huge heart and I'm really emotional, and I spent most of my life blaming other people for the way they made me feel, and that didn't work so well for me at all. But now I find that when I sit in a circle and I hear that other people feel the same way that I do, it makes me feel normal. So I try to do that as much as possible, and it helps my head be connected with my heart and my actions, and I love that. It feels really good. So that's it. And I'm not so violent. I used to, which I admit I used to be. Felt really good to break things. Sorry about that. Now I don't break things so much. And I'm a lot more loving. So that's it. I'm going to give my to somebody else before I say too much. There we go.
And she said she was going to be brief. So, I got 2 minutes and 36 seconds left. And how can I share you a lifetime of my pain to let you know what AVP has done for me? By the time I was 21 years old, I had developed into a type of individual that I was so emotionally shut down and disconnected from my heart. That I sat in a courtroom where there was nobody on my side that didn't think it was a good idea to put me in a cage for the rest of my life. And I sat in that cage for the next 35 years trying to figure it out. How did I get there? What did I do? I'm not a bad guy. Growing up, I never felt I was a part of anything. I always felt disconnected from my environment and the people in that environment. I felt rejected. 17 years into that life sentence, I was introduced to AVP. And AVP opened up my heart. I thought I was going crazy because here I am, a tough convict Scotsman. And all of a sudden, I got feelings that I don't know nothing about. I am out of control with these feelings. Where did this start at? Well, that was the catalyst. It started my transformation into being what I think of and try to be a decent human being. And that's what my goal is today. As it is my life. And I hope if you people know of anyone in your neighborhood, your communities that might need a little bit of help. The kid standing on the street corner that you think is a gang member and you're scared of him, and when you see him, you cross the street because you think he might have a knife or he might try to hurt you or take something from you. All he's doing is standing there wanting to be accepted, wanting to know that he's a part of something. Today, because of AVP, today I have the knowing that I am a part of a community, that you no longer dictate who I am. Today I have a voice. 40 years ago, I didn't use my voice, and I allowed another human being to be brutally murdered because I didn't think my voice mattered. AVP has helped me find my voice, and that's why I stand here today. I was trying to think of, with 7 seconds left, I was trying to think of how can I let you know that you're just like me? Well, one of the things is the Rotary symbol. AVP has the same symbol. In the center that we're going to pass out, we have brochures that has our symbol of what we call transforming power. That in the center of that hub that you talked about, the AVP calls that our point of transforming power, which is the same thing, that it gives us our ability, if we're connected with ourselves in here, that we have the ability to reach out to others in our community and connect. Oh, there's that buzzer. You know, an extra minute. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So the last thing I say, because I'm way over time and I have a long wind today. The shining example that I can give you is the best is Miss Dory Stone, who stood up in front of you, because I had the honor of facilitating her basic workshop about 4 years ago. And she is a product of AVP and what AVP can do in your life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Roger. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. There we go. I don't either. Well, thank you very much, Roger and Nancy and Grayson. Thank you very much.